Time ago, in a village where the baobab trees reached the heavens and the savannah stretched as far as the eye could see, there lived a young girl named Amara. She was a girl of rare beauty, with dark eyes that shone like the night and hair that flowed like rivers in the rain. But her beauty was not what defined her. What made Amara extraordinary was her love for dance. It was her soul's language, the rhythm that made her heart beat. However, Amara's life was far from peaceful. Her mother had died when she was very young, and her father remarried a woman named Inyoka. Inyoka was a cruel woman with a heart made of stone, and her two children, Mbali and Tabo, were no better. They mocked Amara, made her do the hardest chores, and treated her like a servant. One day, as Amara was cleaning the hut in the cold early morning, Nyoka walked in with a wicked smile on her face. Amara, she said sharply, I have news from the village. The prince will be coming soon to choose a wife, and there will be a grand dance. You, of course, will not be allowed to participate. You are far beneath us, and I will not have you disgracing me in front of the prince. Amara looked up, her heart aching. She longed to dance, but she knew her place. Yes, stepmother, she replied quietly, bowing her head. Nyoka turned away with a sneer. Good. Now get to work. The others are preparing for the dance, and you will be doing their bidding whilst they practice. Stay out of their sight. I don't want the prince to even see you. That night, Amara, as a worker, was working by the dim light of a small fire outside. She listened to the sounds and the sounds of the women who were practicing their dance from the village square. Laughter and music filled the air, and Amara's heart sank with longing. She had danced once, in secret, under the moonlight's glow, and the earth beneath her feet had whispered back. But now, her stepmother's words cut deeper than any blade. She felt as if the world had forgotten her. Suddenly, as if the wind itself had heard her sorrow, the night air grew still. A soft voice spoke from the shadows. You grieve, my child. Amara spun around startled and saw an old woman emerge from the darkness. Her skin was dark as the earth after a storm, her hair as white as the mist that rises from the savannah at dawn. She walked with the grace of someone who lived countless lifetimes. Who are you? Amara asked, her voice trembling. The old woman smiled, her eyes sparkling with ancient wisdom. I am the spirit of dance. I have watched you, Amara, and I know the music that stirs your heart. Your mother had it in her too. Amara's breath caught. The spirit of dance? But I'm not worthy. I'm just a servant. The spirit of dance shook her head. You are a daughter of the earth, Amara. The dance is in you. It flows through your veins, and it has been waiting for you to set it free. Amara looked down, ashamed. I want to dance, but I am forbidden. My stepmother says I am not worthy. The spirit stepped closer, and her hand, gentle as a wind, touched Amara's shoulders. Do not listen to those who seek to silence you, my child. I will personally teach you, and you will dance as the earth intended. Come, let me show you the way. For the days that followed, under the cover of night, the spirit of dance taught Amara. She showed her how to listen to the earth, how to feel the rhythms of the wind, the heartbeat of the drums, and the pulse of the stars. Each step was a lesson, each movement a prayer. The dance was not just a performance, it was a conversation with the soul of the world itself. Amara had learned how to move with grace and power, to spin as though the wind themselves were guiding her. She leaped as if she could touch the heavens. Finally, the day of the festival came. The village square was alive with music, and the women of the village, dressed in brilliant fabrics, rehearsed their steps with joy. But Amara, in her simple dress stood alone, hidden away from the others by the walls of her stepmother's house. Nyoka looked around and not seeing Amara anywhere sneered. Good, stay where you belong. But Amara's heart was filled with a fire that could not be extinguished. She knew that her time had come. She rushed back to the house to change into her late mother's dancing clothes. As the sun began to calm down, casting a golden hue over the square, Amara slipped quietly into the crowd, praying to be unnoticed. Her heart raced with anticipation, but her steps were steady. She began to dance. She knew that the moment she had dreamed of had finally arrived. The prince, however, a young man tall and handsome, sat on a raised platform surrounded by his advisers. He was looking over at the women of the village who were preparing their dance. Some had already started, but when he set eyes on Amara, he stopped. There was something about her, something in her that made the world feel still. Amara stepped forward, her bare feet barely touching the earth. The music began and she moved as though she had always been part of it. Her body swirled in a perfect circle, her arms sweeping the air like the angels of an eagle, her feet gliding over the ground as if she were one of them. The crowd fell silent. Their eyes were fixed on her. She was not like any other woman at the square. She was adorned with only simple jewels, and her clothing were not the finest. But she wore her attire with so much pride and confidence, and the fire in her eyes had captured their hearts. The prince stood up, entranced, his mouth was wide open with wonder. Amara danced. Her dance told the story of her life, of the pain of being unheard, of the joy of finding her voice, and of the beauty in freedom. The crowd could feel her story in every movement, and the prince felt as if she had heard his very soul. When the music reached climax, Amara spun, her arms outstretched as if she were reaching for the stars. The crowd gasped. The earth underneath her feet began to tremble for a moment. The prince stepped forward, his eyes wide open. Who is this woman? He whispered to his. He is Amara, came the answer. He's a servant, but tonight he's a queen of dance. The prince moved beyond words, stepped into the center, and held out his hand. Amara, will you please join me for a dance? Amara's heart was pounding out of her chest. For the first time, she did not see a prince. She saw a man who understood the power of her spirit. I will dance with you, my prince, she said. Her voice was strong, but not as a servant. I will dance as your chosen queen. With these words, the prince took her hand, and together they danced. The village erupted into applause, and Amara, no longer hidden in the shadows, stood at the center of the square. The spirit of dance, watching from afar, smiled. Her work was done. From that day, Amara was no longer a servant. She became the queen of dance, beloved by the prince, revered by the people. And every night under the moonlight sky she danced, her feet tracing the story of her heart, her soul forever entwined with the rhythm of the earth, and a prince who loved her for just who she was.